everybody and welcome back to another video. I'm your host OT and we are back with another review. Same setup, I'm going to do an overview of the episode, tell you what's going on. And then at the very end, that's when I give my opinions on the episode. And seeing as this is the series finale, I suppose I will give a review of how the series has been in general. So, a lot has been building up to this moment, and we're going to recap the last episode. So, Charles has been found out by Emily, and this forced him to leave Calendar Hall without saying anything to either Rosamund or anyone else. He just decided to pack his bags and go, thanks to one Constance, who actually has contributed for once. However, this arc was overshadowed by the conclusion of the side plot where Jack gets arrested because of what his brother did, and he's falsely accused. So after visiting Jack's family home and finds that the family are in rather a sticky situation, Hetty decides to advocate on Jack's behalf and write a supposed short story which would then go into a newspaper. And after George reads it, he automatically, very quickly should I say, gets Jack free from prison and he returns safely to Calendar Hall. And now him and Hetty seem to be an item. This story was terrible in execution because it justifies stealing, which is wrong, and there are no consequences for Jack Jr. But, yeah, that rant was in the last episode. So, towards the end of the last episode, Hetty almost gave Sheila the letter that Charles had from Matron Bottomley earlier in the series. She puts it in the pantry, which is then found by Brodie, who then gives it to Lady Grenford, who plans to expose Rosamund's secret in this episode. So, let's crack on with Series 4, Episode 10. Well, we begin as Emily's sweet 16th birthday has arrived. I remember being 16 so well. That was in my leftist days. Hetty reflects on the occasion, bringing the family together. She also includes Charles in this, which means that this is the moment to tell Rosamund the truth about her son. They played an April Fool's joke there, didn't they? And it's not even April Fool's anymore. At the end of the last episode, I was so frustrated at the fact that Charles didn't admit to Rosamund the truth towards the end of the last episode when he had the chance. And we even thought that Lady Grenford was going to be the one to tell Rosamund about this. But, in the words of an internet legend, oh my dude, you just got pranked! We then go to a random street to see Brodie then tracking down Charles with a letter in her hand. We then cut back to Calendar Hall as Rosamund is in absolute shock at what she has just heard. She then tells Hetty not to tell anybody, and then we go to the title sequence. After the title sequence, Brodie tries to bring Charles to Calendar Hall so that he can tell his biological mother of his existence. The reason he didn't do this earlier was because the time was never right. So Brodie departs while offering her assistance if he should change his mind. So back to Calendar Hall, and Hetty comes into the kitchen to find that the crew are having a clean-a-thon, as apparently a new cook is being searched out in possibly as Mrs. Whittock's left. She might be replaced by either Mark Carney or two-tier Keir Starmer. Hello, I am your new cook. Everyone will eat really safe and healthy Islamic vegan food and drink soy milk, all for the greater good. And if you don't like this, you are far right and will be arrested. Long live Big Brother. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, I just want to keep Donald Trump out of my country. Trump's a really, really bad person. And I don't want him to ever come ever again. I don't want to be the 51st state. I need to join the TDS group with Keir Starmer and the rest of the European leaders. So, Agnes has been left in charge while Brodie is out. Jack then comes in to ask something, but it's going to have to wait as Hetty immediately dismisses him. Hetty suspects Brodie being out at this time is suspicious, as Lizzie then concurs. Sheila then tells her about Brodie tearing apart the pantry for the letter, so Hetty goes to look for it to find that it is missing. Next up, cue the Imperial March as Lady Grenford has arrived, and not far off, Edwin and Emily are spying on her. Edwin then tries to build up some anticipation of her bringing a gift for his sister, but she doesn't want anything from her. Back to Grenford now, who is informed of Brodie's successful mission. Edwin suggests that they take up a better position to spy from, so Emily uses the secret door in the library in order to listen in. Lady Grenford interrupts Rosamund writing Emily's birthday letter as we flick between them and Emily listening in the library. However, this does not pay off as Emily overhears that she will be engaged to Robert on her birthday. So, Rosamund must convince Emily or George, otherwise her secret will be revealed to the world. Grenford knows about this because rumours always find a way to her. Her actions are explained because she wants Emily's fortune all for herself and envisions ruin for the rest of the Calendar family. Rosamund tries to resist verbally, but this does no good as decision time will be at the party, and one of two announcements will be made. Either the engagement or the announcement of a very different kind. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, Rosamund has a very special announcement for you. Yes. I've got a very exciting announcement that Lady Grenford did not tell me to tell everybody. I want to tell everybody that Anakin has turned to the dark side. Revenge of the Sith came out 20 years ago. You think we don't know that? After this, Rosamund paces around crying, and then we go to Emily, who closes the secret door slowly and in a state of silence. A bit later, Hetty runs into Lady Grenford and Brodie briefly. When she's gone, the duo gloat about how determined they are as the plan is coming into fruition. Just then, Emily approaches to speak with Lady Grenford for a most urgent matter. Meanwhile, Rosamund is having a moment in her room as she is consoled by Hetty, who then informs her of Brodie visiting Mr. Buscombe. So, Rosamund writes a letter to be delivered to him before it's too late. However, Hetty thinks this will be put to rest if George was informed of his godmother's debts, and not the secret, and there would be no engagement whatsoever. Just then, Brodie comes in and summons Hetty to the kitchen. Lizzie would be needed to run Hetty's letter for her, but Rosamund says that this isn't important, and it can wait. So now we go to a different room in the house, where Emily has turned heel and now wants to marry Robert. Lady Grenford, however, tries to psychologically see if she's telling the truth or not by going on about duty and asks if she's spoken to anybody about this. She hasn't done so, and the engagement will be announced at the party. Can you imagine Jim Ross narrating this scene? What the hell are you doing, Emily, you son of a bitch? You've shaken hands with Satan himself! Grenford leaves, seemingly, and a little bit later, the party guests arrive and a lot of people show up, including Lady Grenford, because she's decided to rush back home for 5 minutes and then go back again. Oh, hold on, I've just got to go back and get changed, even though I've been here for the first part of the episode. She shows up with Robert by her side. What I've also noticed when watching the episode is that George welcomes another guest called Grenford as well. Now, I presume that this is some relative of Robert, and he didn't say anything during a scene that happens later on in the episode. I just presume that he got very drunk. Just then, Emily comes down and she looks absolutely wonderful in her outfit. And her hair is in all curls and she looks really nice. She's then told by her father that she has a bright future ahead of her, which is then twisted by Lady Grenford and Robert, making her looking rather uncomfortable. She then takes Robert's arm and they go into a room full of guests. As George catches up with an old friend, Rosamond offers to Lady Grenford Hetty's suggestion of telling George about her debts and forgetting about the engagement, which doesn't seem to stop her. Edwin and Constance then observe how Emily is talking to Robert and depicts that they are falling in love. Rosamond catches wind of this, so she catches a word with her stepdaughter to hear that she wants to marry Robert out of duty to her family, as she overheard the conversation earlier. So Rosamond then goes to fetch George. Outside, Jack and Gideon both spot Charles swanning on into Calendar Hall, as one runs after him and the other decides to stay out of it, the other of course being Jack, and the former being Gideon. An alert Hetty sees George and Rosamond walking into another room, which worries her, so she gives Agnes her serving plate to then see Charles talking to a maid. Sheila thinks that he wants his job back and doesn't want anything to do with Hetty's plan to eject him from the venue, but her tray is accidentally knocked over, giving Hetty the chance to catch up to direct him into the library as deception. Not far behind is Gideon, but neither is Brodie, who is in the entranceway, as she sees Sheila cleaning up her mess, who excuses this by saying that it was the wind. So our three characters are in the library as Charles is given the letter from Rosamond. He asks if this was discussed with Brodie or not because he can't trust anyone, and demands to see his mother as he is tired of being told what to do by messengers. He proceeds to charge out, but both he and Hetty avoid narrowly getting spotted by Brodie and head back into the library. He now has to escape through the secret tunnel with Gideon, as he asks what's going on with Brodie as we flicker between outside and the library. He is warned that he is being used and manages to escape through the other door just in time as Brodie approaches. The housekeeper comes in and talks about how her adversary knows Rosamond's every secret and almost opens the door where Charles is. This works as he heads into another part of Calendar Hall and into the party. Gideon gets to Agnes and Jack. Agnes volunteers to distract Brodie while word is passed on to Sheila. When I say volunteer, I mean, get out the way, men, I can deal with this myself, innit? Meanwhile, Hetty continues to test Brodie's patience as Jack comes up to the window, witnessing her opening the door to the secret tunnel, and with Agnes entering the room, Hetty gives the signal and they trap Brodie in the door. She is told by Hetty that she has to find Charles, who is said to be at the party. Sheila and Lizzie then arrive to aid Agnes, while Hetty continues on her mission. However, inside the secret doorway, Brodie manages to light a lantern that she found. Charles and Hetty then meet up in the party, but he is then dragged off by the hand, as this would be a bad place to read the letter in. Lady Grenford witnesses this and asks where Brodie's whereabouts is. Well, she's currently going through the dark tunnel and into the garden. She sees the light and is almost out when Jack stands in her way. But after being given the threat of his mother no longer getting the care she needs, he gives way and she's let through. Back in the party, Rosamond and George try to verbally stop Lady Grenford, advising her to leave, and reassuring her that her bills will be paid. But she decides to make the announcement there and then. We think she's going to announce the engagement, But instead she tells everybody about Rosamund's biological son, which is then pointed out by Brodie. Charles denies this and the letter's existence, leaving Grenford's gob wide open, and is told to explain herself. She then screws Brodie over by putting it all on her, feeding her misinformation, and leaves with Robert while the celebrations continue. And I bet everybody is celebrating Lady Grenford leaving. I bet they're thinking, well, thank God that bitch has gone. I heard she clogged the toilet the other day. Oh my word. I feel sorry for the poor housemaids. And not just that, but I heard that she deliberately broke the valuable china. She really is a horrible woman, isn't she? Grenford departs knowing that her debts will be paid off, and is warned that George now has sway over her, not the other way around. Brodie begs for mercy, but there is none, as she will be with Lady Grenford for the rest of her days, seemingly. Robert also says goodbye to Emily as they roast one another. Edwin then proudly calls this the perfect ending, as the dragon and 20-something-year-old boy are cheekily waved off by Emily, and the calendars head inside as George wishes to speak to Charles. And I bet we could hear them say as they go off, and we would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids. And from what sounds like an opera singer shouting her head off, and poor old Brodie just letting it all sink in, being like, I've heard this shit before, so Grenford can't break me. Back downstairs in the kitchen, Lizzie recites that family is all that matters as she hugs Hetty. Ah yes, she's referenced to Skillet's song, or referenced to Skillet's song years before it even came out. Jack and Gideon are spared food by Agnes, as Sheila references remarks about a cake that she made. Jack and Hetty also make up, and she is then asked out again before being kissed on the cheek. Sheila then jokingly cringes about this, and everyone then laughs. We then get a scene with Rosamund and Charles. She says that he has always wondered what he must have been through, and that he has always been a part of her life, and he will now be a permanent member of the family. Finally, Hetty narrates how Calendar Hall is now her home, and how she's brought the family together. However, she feels as though she has to write the next chapter of her life, as we see Emily cutting her birthday cake. And that is the end of Hetty Feather Series 4. And it certainly took the hell of a long time to make it this far, folks. We got 2 more series to go. So now we go on to the review section of this video. First of all, we're going to review the episode as a whole, and then we're going to review the rest of the series and how I feel it's been. In the good parts, there's been a lot of deception, but for all the right reasons. So, first of all, they really had us with the fact that Hetty told Rosamund in this episode and not at the end of the last episode, which, as if you watch the video, you'd probably guess I was incredibly pissed off by it. Went on a bit of a rant, but they sort of fixed that in this episode. They also got us when we all thought that Lady Grenford was going to announce Emily and Robert's engagement, but instead she shared the knowledge of Charles's existence. And of course, Brodie is screwed over at the very last second when she thinks she's got away with it, but she hasn't. Another thing as well, we see the staff working together to trap Brodie in the tunnel, and then a while later she obviously gets out. But it was nice to see the staff finally working together. Also, the editing has been a high point of not just this episode, but the whole series, because we get all sorts of transitions happening throughout the various episodes. So say when we flash between Emily listening in to Lady Grenford and Rosamund's conversation, you feel like you're in both rooms. And then George finally kicks out Lady Grenford and Robert. Also, at the end, the main cast together in the kitchen, talking like they're one big happy family. That was kind of a wholesome scene. The downsides are, I think that Hetty should have let Charles speak to Rosamund in private during the party. I know that would have caused a scene. I'd have also liked to have heard what the other Grenford character that we heard about when the party guests were arriving. I want to hear what he would have said during the confrontation. Also, I think we should have had a scene where George confronts Charles, but it would have been a whole lot better for the episode. In fact, I feel as though Charles should have just revealed his identity to Rosamund at the end of last episode, when he had the chance, but obviously he didn't. Though one of the small things I don't like is that if Charles was in league with, had a letter from Matron Bottomley and then obviously knew of her existence, then surely he would have been manipulated and would have hatched a plan to take down Calendar Hall for his own reasons, or he could have joined forces with Lady Grenford. Surely that would have been a good alternative storyline for this. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I really did think that Charles was going to be a villain, but instead at the last minute they decide to do a face turn. So all in all, this episode was okay. It could have been done much better. Now, as for the series in general, so I felt as though this was mid at best. Some episodes have been nonsensical, as in Lizzie's debut, because obviously how Agnes wasn't fired for lying on her CV. I don't think they had CVs back then, but how Agnes wasn't fired for lying is absolutely beyond me. Others have been filler, like the Fairground episode, which I liked. Vince's one episode return, it was okay until they turned him into this fictional wolf character just because Constance believes in a fairy tale. But the hounds of Ross will never fall. With this episode came a change of heart for the character. The episode where Mrs. Whittock left was sad because of the topic it was covering. And 2 episodes absolutely broke me. I think you know which ones, i.e. the Strong Whammon episode and the previous episode. Bear in mind this is 2018 this was made, when woke was just getting started. The elder calendars seem to live in their own world, but now it seems they've had something to overcome. Perhaps change is on the way. My favourite villain in this has to be Robert Grenford, because he's so snarky and narcissistic. To be honest, I think he would be a great master in Doctor Who. Or in fact, a better doctor than Ncuti Gatwa ever will be. Now, character-wise, I do think that Hetty still makes choices without thinking, and her intentions aren't always agreeable at times. I do think her relationship with Jack also needs time to prove itself. Now, next up is Gideon, and his friendship and loyalty to Edwin and Jack are the standout characteristics of him in this series. The love triangle with Agnes and Sheila could be amusing at times, but it doesn't really interest me. Speaking of Agnes, at first I just found her completely annoying, and her story arc with Lizzie and of course Karen, I was frustrated with it because she lied on her application, which no one would ever do because you'd immediately get ejected from every job you'd ever applied to and you'd get fired on the spot. Then we go on to Jack. So the thing that stands out with him is that he's been loyal to Edwin and he uses his gardening knowledge and puts it to good use. It certainly came into use when Edwin was ill. But the frustrating thing about him is that his story arc with his Jack Jr., his brother, and his mother was completely unnecessary because it could have been prevented. And his brother shouldn't have stolen out of sheer desperation. I went over that instalment of this and I went on a rant. Next up we have Sheila, who has learnt to keep to herself and embraced her responsibilities, especially since Mrs. Whittock left, which was a really sad episode. And there is one wholesome scene in which Sheila labels everything in the pantry to make adjustments for Mrs. Whittock. But yeah, that has to be one of the saddest moments in the show's history. I'd also say that Sheila is my favourite character in this series because Polly Allen has amazing charisma. She's so funny at times. The things that she comes out with, the sharp wit. This might be controversial, but I like Sheila more than Hetty. So then we have Lizzie. Her introduction was the most Karen-esque thing I'd ever seen because her mother just showed up and demanded to speak to the manager and just put her in front of Calendar Hall to say, "You want to hire this girl? Please hire her because we need money." Yeah, I feel as though at times she's just been in the background giving her idea of things briefly. Now we go on to Edwin. So at times he's been cheeky and knowledgeable, but others has been slightly annoying. However, I like how he was suspicious of Robert before anyone else was, and he's been a good friend to both Jack and Gideon. Now we go on to Emily. So I didn't like her at first. I just, again, found her rather annoying. But her character definitely improves. And now she's becoming more strong, independent woman. And she acts with great strategy. Over the course of this series, this builds up to the party with the preparations. And her comebacks towards Robert are especially funny. The second most interesting thing about this series was Charles, because the way he was introduced was an absolute surprise, and his intentions were to bring the calendars down. I mean, it seemed that he was manipulated by Matron Bottomley, and it would have been also nice to see Hetty try and dissuade him from doing so. Here's a bonus. He went to college in Cambridge, which... it's really nice to get our wonderful city shouted out from time to time. Constance was the most annoying, and the only time when she's contributed is towards the end of the Charles storyline. Next up, we have Count Dooku 2.0. Oh, sorry, I meant to say Brody. So at first I thought that she was a lackey for Lady Grenford and sent for infiltration purposes. But as she begins to manipulate Hetty, it's a game of verbal cat and mouse. And her getting screwed over at the end, as I say, Count Dooku 2.0. Hell, Lady Grenford's mind was basically saying, "Do it!" as she basically threw Brody under the bus. And also, we could see through the cracks in the penultimate episode. Also, her actor again does really good shouting. Then finally, the main villain, Lady Grenford. So, I kind of predicted our whole plan when I started this. And we all knew that she was going to bring the calendars down somehow. I like how she was trying to undermine everyone when she was talking over everybody. And again, good casting as well. Georgie Glenn is an amazing actress. And the scene where she reveals the existence of Charles is proof of that. Like, the whole stage, I felt, belonged to her in that one moment. Best episode of this series, I would say the one where Mrs. Whittock leaves, because it's sad and it deals with a very important topic. I know that I gave her a lot of shit. I even nicknamed her Biden Whittock, and I knew that something was up with her. The sad conclusion and the sad reality is that eventually things like that do happen to the human mind as it deteriorates. And they handled this really well because it was slowly built up, and then when it came to a head, they made it finally reach boiling point, and Sheila, bless her heart, tried to owe up to her and make reasonable adjustments by labelling everything in the pantry, but alas, it was too late, and therefore she had to leave. And when she leaves, we see Sheila cry, which I believe is a rare occasion in this. You know, she cried when referencing Monica in the last series, and here she cries because, you know, one of her colleagues is leaving her, someone who she doubted at first, but now she's come to appreciate a lot more. So yeah, I really think that was a very important episode. And the worst episode of this series was the one where Jack gets freed from prison. In fact, we barely see that happening, and it promotes a crime, basically. It's thievery, and thievery is a crime. It could have been prevented earlier in the series, and it absolutely frustrated me. But hey, it wasn't Jack's fault, it was his brother. Therefore, his brother should have been locked up and not him. Wait, what's that I hear? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Cook Jenkins. And thank God Lady Grenford's finally been dealt with. Thought she'd never show up. And now she's finally been told to go on and go out and pack her bags. Same with that Brody and that Robert Grenford, thankfully. I'm surprised she can't pay her debts. If she knew all the are up, she'd ring her friends up the Labour Party and say to get some free gear from Lord Ali. Hey up, might as well get her free tickets to the opera at this rate, knowing her. And the conclusion to Charles' storyline felt like an episode of Coronation Street with that. But, you know, without the northern accents and all the punch-ups in pub. Would have probably happened in Yorkshire, but not down south. They're more civilised where they are. Had this been the pub in the north, the whole place would have erupted into a brawl. Glass would have gone everywhere, and drunkards would have been drunkards. But what a series finale that was. Oh God, I don't know what to make of it. And now at the end, Mr. Charles decides, you know what, I'm going to be a good guy from now on, because I went to a posh Cambridge college and that, and is acting all innocent with her. Either that, or old Gertie probably said, don't mess with Hetty Feather. And now at the end, it seems that Hetty and Jack are now courting. I had no time for that. When I were young, I worked. But anyway, I've said that enough times already, so I'm going to end this method in making, and I will see you all next series. Ta-ra now! And that ends our review of Series 4 of Hetty Feather. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you all later. Ta-ra!